Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the Sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. Last episode, we talked about the mind-spirit relationship and how operating with purpose leads us toward meaningful experiences and fulfillment. Today, we'll continue our exploration of the mind-spirit relationship and how different types of positive thinking practices enhance or reduce our quality of life. That's right, you heard that right. I hope this exploration of a mindset shift speaks to you in life-changing ways like it has for me as I built a life filled with meaning that fuels my confidence, purpose, and quality of life. In this episode, we'll probe beneath the surface of what meaning-making living is, we'll dissect the differences between mush makers and meaning makers, and we'll explore some ways to build a meaning maker mindset and lifestyle. As we approach this new year, I'm sure you're hearing a lot of messages already that are, talking about mindset being everything and how to shift your mindset, how to adopt a positive mindset. And sure, the difference between a good day in life and a bad one is directly connected to our attitude and our mindset. Our minds are powerful, the most powerful thing we have if we engage it effectively. There's a danger, though, in this trending push toward building positive thinking and what I consider blind positivity. Positive thinking does lead us toward an improved quality of life. But this brings me to a key term I want to talk about here, and that is quality. You can't overlook this part of the larger picture because there's a lot of different positivity kind of thinking and behaviors that are promoted that don't necessarily align with improving the quality of your interactions or improving the quality of your life. So I like to break this conversation down into two different types of people. While the spectrum is varied and there are lots of gray areas in between here, I want to talk about two distinct ones kind of on opposite sides of the spectrum here. Those being mush makers and meaning makers. So a mush maker are all those smile and good comments only folks. To mush make is to kind of build a mountain atop mushy, feel-good phrases and concepts. It's like a hollow mountain though. The exterior appears like solid ground, maybe in like really beautiful ground, but it's completely empty on the inside. I was thinking recently about this concept when I was talking to someone about ice caves. This is a perfect example of how this mush maker mindset plays out, where if you've ever seen an ice cave, it's where a body of water freezes over the top and somehow, some way, the water either like the waterway opens up and drains that water out or it evaporates. And now you have this hollowed out space where the body of water once sat, but now because the temperatures are still frozen, you've got that surface layer that's still frozen and you've got the ground and this where the body of water was sitting. And so you have this kind of like basin with a cover on it and nothing's left in there. And so if you were walking atop this ice, this what you think would be a pond, you might fall through because this thin layer of ice is no longer being supported by the body of water underneath. So it's a really intriguing concept to think about, but this whole mush make concept really reminds me of that. It's this hollowed out space where the actual body of meaning, the quality is gone. It has left the area. This forced positivity, first of all, is not sincere. So some mush makers have memorized all the right catchphrases and they speak into situations, but have nothing beyond that to add any additional meaning. So if you've ever had somebody who's like put this kind of like blanket statement over there or said something that everybody else is saying because it's trending, and then maybe you ask a follow-up question or you make a comment to that, and then there's like nothing. They have nothing left to give you because it really was a hollow comment that they have absolutely no idea or understanding of what it actually means, or they don't care what it means. They just said it in a very insincere way. There's also the MUSH makers who exemplify false positivity. We see a lot of that running around right now. So they're pretending things are fine when they aren't, for the sake of just staying positive. They even might be those individuals who say those really condemning, dismissive, sometimes insensitive things, comments like, look on the bright side, well, it could be worse, honey, or get over it, stay positive, or there's always something to be grateful for. And it feels awful when we're on the other side of those comments, when we're in the messy middle of our suffering, or when we're really struggling with some kind of negative feelings or a negative situation, and we're trying to be positive, or we're trying to find a way out of it, and that just seems to be something that just kind of feels like it starts to bury us alive. This type of forced positivity is also an avoidance coping mechanism. So a lot of therapists are kind of talking about that on different podcast shows right now, about how we have become a society that really struggles with this avoidance coping, and also with the trauma associated with dealing with people who operate in this method. And it's fake with a side of fake. It's so disingenuous, for lack of a better word. It is completely insincere, and it's transparent. A lot of times, if you're really looking for authentic connection and someone is coming across this way, you immediately start to distrust that, because you can tell it's not sincere. It's not backed by anything, any care or any concern for your moment of suffering or for your struggle through this negative emotion. So it forces, or it can force, this upbeat vibe by steering everything away from potentially difficult topics or feelings. So that person who's like okay, let's redirect, let's manipulate the situation. As soon as things start to get where they could even potentially make one person uncomfortable or take the conversation anywhere potentially even slightly negative, it's like, nope, redirect, change the topic. And that upbeat vibe often shuts you down. I know it shuts me down. If I sense that I'm not really going to go off into like a major tangent, sometimes, again, I'm going to get into this a little bit more. I'm looking for some kind of meaningful engagement, or somebody to speak something meaningful or encouraging or just on topic back to me. And then I am opposite of that forced upbeat kind of strategy. It really shuts me down. It's very difficult for me to recover from that, because I don't even want to engage with you. You're not really looking to meaningfully engage. And some of the topics that maybe you're just trying to like force into the conversation are just filler. And I'm sorry, but I do not have time for filler. I don't fill my life with filler. I'm always trying to meaningfully engage with people, even in small talk. You can do so many incredible things with super small talk and make people feel seen and valuable and, like they matter. So another thing that I've kind of watched happen in this mush maker mindset is it often leads into false dichotomies, or in other words, like a false dilemma, where it's this flawed logic that asserts it can only be one way or the other. So it usually suggests like, if you remain perpetually positive on this one side, that's really the only true way to happiness. On the other side, it's not going to lead anywhere good. So it's just a very flawed way of looking at things and imposing that kind of mindset on individuals and on situations. So mush making is also a state of denial. It keeps us from seeing and navigating our real emotions, and it keeps us from fostering empathy. And it just fosters instead these meaningless interactions. Or if you think about like a really simple stripped down way to look at this is 0 times any number equals 0. Because the value that you start with, 0, cannot add value to any number it comes in contact with. So if you just think about this kind of mush maker mentality, it really is this like zero entering into the scene, and it doesn't matter what X is. As soon as you're saying 0 times X equals 0, it's going to equal 0 because there's no value to begin with. On the other side, you have meaning makers. These are the folks who recognize the positive, of course, but they also do so by seeking to understand the how and the why connected to the what. So whatever the negative thing is, the negative emotion, the negative situation, the negative details associated with your emotions or the situation, it's this kind of like, okay, I'm going to see and acknowledge the negative aspects, of course, but I'm going to choose to probe beneath the surface to uncover positive elements and the better outcomes that I'm after. And in doing that, I might need to look face on some of these negative elements and deal with them. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. When we approach things with this mindset, we're actually channeling the optimism through understanding the larger picture elements. We're not doing like this cancels this out. We're looking at seeking a better understanding, finding meanings, hidden beneath the surface of things. And we have to kind of dig around through some things before we can discover those things. So we see certain negative things as temporary or something that can be turned around. So that's another really telling differentiation that sets apart that meaning maker mindset. We are also looking for authentic positivity that stems from acknowledging difficult things and feelings while actively seeking those solutions. When we do this, we're not just purpose-driven, which is something we've talked about over the last 6 weeks. We are also showing vulnerability. And when we show vulnerability, it's kind of like the wound is open. And the wound is open so that it can be healed, so that things that are wrong can be, they can be even noticed and addressed. And it validates reality and the total impact on the self and others around us. So it's this state of operating in the real stuff, not trying to pretend that things are not as they are and building this kind of disillusionment that doesn't lead us somewhere productive. It often leads us to compounding trauma and compounding the negative things that we're actually trying to, rid our lives of to begin with. So it's like this very counterintuitive thing of, living in a state of denial and delusion. So this authentic positivity also, it pinpoints negative emotions and details with the intentions to work through them proactively. Whatever that may look like for you will really depend on the situation. So if you're just trying to overcome a really simple negative emotion, okay, go through, right? Try to realign some things, try to adjust your thinking, try to sift out the larger picture, find those positive points, find the things that you're working toward, all those different things. But if, it's larger, or maybe if it's compounded or old trauma or attached to some of that old trauma, you might need to work through some healing. You might need to work through some grief stages, which I do talk about in my self-help book, Warrior Sister Cut Yourself Free. There's a link to this book and some of my other books down in the show notes below. So if that's something that maybe you're needing to figure out in a much larger way, you can seek out those resources and other resources as well. This is going to look different depending on what that negative thing is that you're working toward. Ultimately, this meaning maker mindset has us operating in a state of meaning-making consciousness. So here's another big term concept that we need to recognize here. Consciousness, our state of awareness, directs the ways we respond to people and our surroundings. So building on this consciousness and connecting it to our thinking and reactions always serve a purpose, even if this purpose is void of real meaning. Our attitude and mindset set the tone and trajectory for our life and all the interactions along our lifeline. So this makes me think about times and seasons in my life where I've been surrounded by mush makers, and it was insufferable. I remember several years ago, my husband was going through what we could just label right now as a mini nervous breakdown, maybe a full-blown nervous breakdown. But I remember just trying to hold it all together, and I was doing a lot of different things, and I was in school at the time, And I remember just having these really shallow interactions with these individuals. There were a couple of them, but one of them I was doing a lot of different things with. And she would just have these like transactional engagements with me where it just left me feeling empty, and using these catchphrases and, always this like silver lining thinking and talking, but not like, try to hold your hope and try to hold on to it. It was almost like, stop expressing your suffering, or like just put a smile on. It's like I try not to even speak about some of the things. I mean, I got to a point where I wasn't even really sharing things anymore. So instead of being insincere, like, oh, how are things going? I would skirt the issue. I wouldn't be fake and say, oh, everything's just awesome. I felt myself putting a lot of energy into not lying by saying everything was okay, but also not being completely fake. But also, the third trap was trying not to say something that would provoke her to give me one of these awful catchphrases that I was like, I'm so tired of hearing these blanket statements. They just leave me feeling so awful when I walk away, and they're completely meaningless. Like, I can pick it up and I can attach it anywhere, and it's going to make the next person feel just as awful, just as unseen or dismissed. Like, there's no room for your emotional capacity because we women have to hold it all together, or other people are suffering through worth stuff, and all the other things that like do not negate that negative thing that we're trying to wrestle through. Doesn't make it go away. It doesn't negate it. Some of the things, I don't think this individual was trying to make me feel awful. I think she had been programmed and conditioned, perhaps, to use these phrases that she thought were like phrases of encouragement. They tended to make me feel more discouraged than encouraged every single time. They left me feeling worse about myself. They filled me with shame and condemnation, which are not things that we want. So if we need to say something to ourselves, or maybe even to a loved one or someone in passing, that we're like, hey, they need to snap out of it. They need to be that needs to be discouraged. There are times when that tough love kind of comes out and you're like, that needs to be discouraged. So we should speak things with conviction, not like this shame and condemnation that just makes somebody feel really dirty and awful, because what that tends to do is that just tends to make us draw more inward and remove ourselves, not remove the situation, or not remove or deal with those negative emotions. It just causes us to withdraw inward, where now we're really in the dark and we're really alone, trying to wrestle through these things while we're feeling awful and already struggling through stuff, and it just compounds that. On the flip side, there have been plenty of times in my life where I've been surrounded by meaning makers, and these individuals really inspired me. And some of them sat with me through some really difficult stuff, even going back to the same experience, with that experience when my husband was really going through some really difficult stuff, and I was there trying to hold my household together and trying to help him navigate this really rough terrain, and also try to remember, like, I'm a human being in this situation also. And I had some really amazing, authentic connections where people were really trying to understand me, and people who knew me could then speak meaningfully into my life and into the situation. And it felt really good to feel like I was seen and made to feel valuable, like made to feel like I mattered. Like my moment of negative experience or my negative emotions, they mattered, and that people wanted to see me rise above that. Yes. So same kind of positive thinking. They didn't want to see me stay in that place, but how they approached me was completely uplifting, completely different. They were, again, it was the same time period. So I can't even say like, oh, well, I was in a different mindset, or I was going through different things, so I was able to receive during this time when I wasn't able to receive during that time. This is the same exact season of my life that I'm talking about. And when I would be around those individuals, their willingness to validate these negative things and then help me find my own way to a more positive thinking, or to those positive elements or the outcomes that were going to eventually lead me to that fulfillment or that life of happiness or achieving my goals, like that was invaluable. That was life-changing. That would say life-changing is not the right word. That was life-giving. They also talked me through actionable things to consider and to work through or to do to achieve different outcomes. So these experiences and interactions showed me to consider the larger picture. And sometimes it was just reminding me of these things. So it's like we know things sometimes, and then if we surround ourselves with the right network of individuals in the right environments, we will just be reminded of the things we already know so that we can dig deep and draw upon that knowledge that we already carry within. And we just need that person to kind of say, hey, remember, this is what we do when this happens. So this is how we get through this particular thing. They also help me see the complexity. So breaking and seeing things into smaller parts of the larger whole is a really great way for us to be able to even recognize like the negative things and the positive things and what needs to be dealt with or what does need to be just let go. Sometimes things just need to be let go. And it's hard to really see all that when we're just, stuck on one particular big thing or we're just stuck on all the negative stuff. But when we start to look at the complexity of things and we break those small parts down, it's much easier then to like hone in and isolate on a particular thing that we want to address. And again, sometimes we have to address one little thing at a time. Trying to take it all on at once is also going to be another way that we feel very defeated, probably because we are being very defeated because we can't serve all of these things at the same time. We can't give all of these things our full attention at the same time. And sometimes to work through something negative, we literally need to give it 100% of our attention. Like leave the phone behind. Don't let people interrupt you. It's okay sometimes to be selfish and just be alone with this thing and give it 100% of your attention. By isolating those things, it does help you address them, repair them, rebuild them, remove them, whatever it is that you realize needs to be done in that given situation. And the significance of working through those tough and negative things is something we can't overlook either, because healing and resolving things is super important. If you think about what happens when we keep repressing and we keep just burying it inside of us, it becomes this boneyard. It's a graveyard. And things start to rot and decompose, and it's awful. You can make a mountain, speaking of mountain metaphor, you can make a mountain out of all of the buried negative things. It's still there. And you can keep trying to navigate around it, but eventually it's going to take over your entire interior space, and you're going to be left with nothing but to deal with all of those things. It won't be, it will be this mountain of a bunch of things. And so it's also really important to our healing and total well-being and having that meaning-making mindset. That is the positive way of thinking, is if we're dealing with those things and getting them the heck out of that space, why are we giving them valuable real estate? That's, something we have to think about. So we decide how to make meaning from experience and how this shapes our happiness. That's right. We decide that. Not our circumstances, not the people around us, although those things clearly will influence us. But at the end of the day, we decide how we're going to receive things. We decide how we're going to think about and meditate on things, how we're going to deal with things, how we're going to react to things. We decide all of that. So perhaps you're at a crossroad, still figuring out which way leads to a meaningful, positive thinking lifestyle. Or maybe you're stuck in a mush making cycle, or maybe you're stuck around mush makers. Perhaps you're already living a meaning making life, practicing a lot of these things that I'm already mentioning, and you're simply needing a refresher, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago. So as we bring things to a close today, I want you to consider, how do we cultivate a meaning-making lifestyle? Like, what goes into that? First of all, I want you to consider operating in a spirit of gratitude versus a condemnation and a shame mindset. So both of them, you're completely open to hearing what's coming at you, but you're deciding how you're going to receive that and process that and then react accordingly. There's a proverb about this type of gratitude that I'm trying to explain to you that I really, really love, and I call it to mind often because it's not a rainbows and butterfly type of a thing. It's not even, well, maybe it's a little bit of a silver lining thing, but it's like this hope that like, you're not going to stay here. You're not going to stay here forever. And so it is, I have not arrived, but I press on. And so there's kind of like an energy and encouragement that comes out of that helps me be confident and hopeful about like, hey, wherever I'm at right now, I'm not going to stay here because I'm not going to allow myself to stay here. I'm not going to allow these negative things to be a forever. I'm going to find a way to deal with them or find a way to repair them or heal them or bring in things. Sometimes things in our life change. And there's no making it go away. So now we have to adapt and we have to make necessary changes. I'm going through that right now with a loved one, that we have to make some radical lifestyle changes because we just got some not good news about their current health situation. And so maybe in the long-term scheme of things, we can come back to a place where we do repair those things. But right now, this negative thing that's in the way has to have some help. And so we have to deal with that. So sometimes we have to bring in that help or accept help, or we have to adjust and make changes when we're saying, hey, I've not arrived at those outcomes or the end goal, or I'm not entirely living my best quality of life yet, or I'm not entirely on the right path to achieving all those goals or those outcomes that I'm after, but I'm going to press on. And in that pressing on, it's like this box where you've got to fill in the blank, the Mad Libs blank, with the important descriptors. What is that press on going to look like? There's work involved with pressing on. That means you're going to do the things that are necessary to keep moving forward toward those things that you're after, which is that positive, meaning-making lifestyle, which, like we're talking about today, is that positive thinking, meaning-making mindset and lifestyle. Give yourself permission to seek and understand how and why you are even going through something. Why are you experiencing those negative emotions or these negative things to begin with? Consider the complexity of what is going on. So you have to look at the what, but a lot of times we just stop at the what. I've been talking about this a lot as I wrapped up the fall term with my students about, trying to say beyond the what, we really have to spend more of the time figuring out like how and why things work certain ways so that we understand things. And that's where meaningful engagement and understanding come from. They come from spending that time with the how and the why of things. So make room also for a full range of emotions. Stop telling yourself that there's only room for the positive emotions. Like, give yourself that space for the negative emotions, but just don't allow yourself to get stuck there. And again, if you get stuck there, you might need some help navigating back out of that space. But don't just think there's a switch inside of you that's like, okay, nope, switch off, no negative emotions. There's a time and place to be like, don't let yourself feel that way, of course, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about those real emotions that you now have to deal with, or the real negative details of a situation or an interaction that you now have to deal with. That's what I'm talking about. And again, make that time to work through those negative emotions. Meditate on how things are working and how they're interconnected. So again, going back to like the complexity and all the different moving parts, when we allow ourselves to really think about like, okay, what are all the little mechanisms here that are making this thing run and making this thing work? When we start to think about and break all those different things out, then we can get in there and we can figure out why things are working or not working or interconnected the ways that they are. So we have to really understand how things are supposed to work or not supposed to work to get to that why anyway. So we really have to spend some time navigating back and forth between that how and why. And if you must use affirmations, lead with compassion for yourself, number one. Number two, simple recognition of the negative aspect as you reframe those positive affirmations is also okay. Just like that I have not arrived, but I press on proverb. I'm recognizing something negative while also making the larger positive thing the bigger focus there. But also speak encouragement to yourself or even to others that is directly related to those positive changes, outcomes, and goals that you're after. So if you are going to use an affirmation, let it be specific to the situation or specific to something that you expect to come out of that situation. So, be thinking about what can I say meaningfully into this, even if I'm just looking at myself in the mirror and trying to encourage myself, like, girl, you got to get in the shower. You got to put clean clothes on. You got to go out there, revisit the world. Sometimes we also have to take those steps and do that while we're still navigating some of those negative emotions. It's not like life in the world and all of the things that we're maybe committed to and that we have to accomplish in a day, that all gets frozen over while we're dealing with some of our negative emotions or, navigating between negative and positive thinking. Sometimes real life is just going on and playing in the background, and we feel like maybe we're walking through a fog or we're having to deal with both. Sometimes we are blessed with an opportunity that everything can just stop and then we can just sit still and just wrestle with and focus on that one thing. But in the event that we can't, sometimes you need to encourage yourself to, keep meditating throughout the day while you're going through your day, doing other things and putting in all these little tiny steps that are leading you to really big results. So sometimes it's going to play out that way where life is still going on while you're also going through some of these negative emotions and finding and making that meaning that is going to improve your quality of life and is going to realign your thinking into that positive area. Surround yourself with people and resources that enrich your meaningful way of living. I know sometimes you can't just cut everybody out. It's like a purge, right? Just purge everybody out. Sometimes you can't leave your job, or you can't leave your living situation, or you can't leave, maybe you're in school and you can't leave that class because now you're stuck in it and you're not paying to take it over again. So sometimes you're going to have those experiences where you can't completely cut those individuals out, but we certainly can cut out how much real estate we give them. We can tell ourselves that we're not going to internalize the things that they say that might be insensitive. And maybe we can decide we're not going to stand there while someone says something insensitive to us. So we can remove ourselves maybe just from a simple conversation where we might not be removing that person entirely from our life or entirely from the environment. We can just mentally check out. I cannot tell you how many times once somebody has completely insulted me or has come off completely unsympathizing or lacking the kind of human decency that I need in that moment or the empathy that I need in that moment, I internally go somewhere else in my head. So, that's that instance where I am not entirely engaged with you because you have already made it clear to me that this exchange that's happening between us doesn't have the types of meaning or are not a really meaningful interaction. They're either transactional or in times maybe borderline abusive, and they're counterproductive to what I need in this particular instance while I'm trying to navigate this negative emotion. So really don't give up that precious real estate. I say that for everything in your life, but what we're talking about right here in particular, do not allow those individuals who are not giving you anything meaningful to begin with to become a distraction or to stay and set up camp in your internal space, that sacred space. Don't let that come and steal valuable real estate, because you want to fill that real estate with things that add meaning and value to your life. So don't even let it take up just even a little tiny hair of space inside of you. Like that would be another negative emotion where I would say, really sift through that and don't even let it come in. Just let it pass right through. So next episode, we're going to move into how to level up our self-love game by not allowing worry to hold us back. So until we meet again next week, I want you to really feel encouraged to kind of think about this meaning-making mindset and how you can start to apply it or maybe reapply it or maybe apply some new strategies to your everyday life and to these interactions, particularly some of those negative emotions that you might be going through or negative emotions that might rise up this week as you're already thinking about how to apply these things in your life. I hope you find a lot of encouragement and comfort in the things that we talked about today. And also I hope that maybe some of these things give you some clarity that you've really been seeking. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. If you haven't already, consider joining my Facebook group of women just like you, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to get tips, share stories, and find community support. And if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. As you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.